doctor. I'm not a medical doctor by any means, but something very interesting about the word genome is that the word genome is actually the same word as gnome with a G. Gnome, like a little man. A gnome is genome, same word. It's also gnosis. That's the word gnosis comes from the word gnome. And not only that, from gnome, gnome comes from the word jinn or genie. So a genie is a gnome, a genome. And we have a genie in our genome, if that makes sense. So I don't know much about the difference between studying DNA versus genomes, genetics. Howdy, welcome. Saw someone joined in, but
Peace.
yeah. Howdy.
Peace
How y'all
be.
do?
Yo, we're out here. How you doing?
Yes, sir. You already know, Kudjo. I appreciate your efforts, man. You always, you've been doing this for a long time, man. So I salute you.
Honest to you, more. You have question or comment?
Yeah, Dr. Longo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. Like, I pretty much appreciate the information. And I wanted to ask you, like you familiar with Tartaria, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tartaria was old Scythia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we know in that old, Scythia is where you get names like Scotland.
Yes.
Scotland and Scandinavia and all that. And we know Scythia is Scotia, the Princess Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just, tying in that whole Moorish connection. And the people that we call like Vikings would have been the Russ and the Danes, right?
Yep. Good job.
So Eric the Red, I wanted to touch on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Eric the Red basically founded America because they say his son Leif Erikson made that final journey. And what I'm saying is they call him Eric the Red.
Mm-hmm.
Like we know that red could mean copper colored people. It's just like saying brunette doesn't only refer to hair color, it refers to skin tone.
Mm-hmm.
When they say swarthy, they know swarthy is skin tone, but they'll say people have swarthy hair also.
Now, a thing about Indian, that's a great point. You touched on like three really, really good points. I'll start right there with the skin color. India is not a place. Hindustan was a place, but India is a skin type. And India and indigo are two separate things. So this is why they had everyone stop saying Indian, because it's racist, right? Or it's mean. And then they have everyone start saying indigenous. Well, what they're getting us to do by saying indigenous is we're losing the meaning of what indigenous means versus Indian. Indigenous is not the same thing as Indian. Indian means red skin. Indi or Andi, which means Ignatius, or what's the word? I can't think of the other ond word, and I'm thinking of, but it's fiery, Ignatius. So indigo is indigenous, indigo. So when you see indigenous, that should mean dark skinned people, like indigo skinned. When you see the word Indian, you're right, that means red skin types, red skin. And that could be interpreted as copper. That could also be interpreted as Phoenician red, which would be like this red paint. Because the Vikings that were coming from the North Pole were so white that when they left the ice for the first time, they were so white, they had no sun resistance. So they had to use red ochre paint, because the red ochre paint acts as a natural sunscreen. So, black people don't usually need sunscreen or any sun protection.
Wow.
These white Vikings definitely would have needed some. But to talk about Eric, let's just look at the word America.
Mm-hmm.
Eric is right there in the word America.
Mhm.
So you know, there's so many interpretations. I think God weaves everything in perfectly together. I don't think we need to say, oh, Amerigo Vespucci versus Eric the Great versus America versus, and just pit them all against each other. I think you have to find the thread and just pull at that common thread, because it's right there in the name,
Mhm.
America. And actually, the Amorites that we were talking about earlier, well, there you have your Amorica too. The land of the Amorites was called Amuru or Amuri. Well, that's Amorica, right? You also have Amalek. If you change that L to an R, which you can do in many languages, Amalek is Amalek, America, right? So it all weaves in wonderfully, and you're absolutely right. The Rus are the red people from the top. So the Rus Vikings probably would have been white-skinned people that had never mixed and were so sun sensitive that they needed red paint to cover themselves. And when they started mixing in with Indian people or Native American people, also we should look at the word native too. Native has the same root word as nautical, which means seafaring people. Mariner, a mariner, might come from the word moriner, and actually the word mar or ocean might come from the word moor, because a mooring stone is what we're going to look at. Some mooring stones here in a sec, the anchors. But a mooring stone, or to moor something, is to dock it, right? Is to tie it up. So you have all these cities around the world called Venices. Venice is the same word as Venice with a PH. So this is how they take the same word and they'll stamp it with different languages so that the spelling is obscured. But phonetically it's the same word. So Venice with a V, Venice, comes from Phoenicia, PH, Phoenicia. Well, up where the Vikings come from, you have Finland, Phoenicia, right? Finland. In, like you just pointed out, Scotia or Scotia, Princess Scotia, who came from Egypt or Canaan and went to the British Isles, Scotland, Ireland, England. From them, you also have, oh God, what was I going to say? Oh man, I forgot. Smoking
It
too
was
much
something
weed.
to do with I know you just said Scythia of Canaan or Egypt.
Yeah. Shit. No, I lost it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, but people don't really understand the greatness of the old Scythian Empire.
Okay, here we go. So Scythian is Scottish, right? You pointed that out, and you're absolutely correct. Well, Scythian is essentially goes from what you could call the Ottoman or the Byzantine Empire, which is kind of Greek, even to Germany, like the Hun. The Hun were in Germany, all the way to Japan, right? And some people would say America. Well, when you look at the Seminole who are Scottish, you know, the most famous Seminole ever was Osceola, right? Osceola. Well, Osceola, he was actually half Scottish, or we're told he was half Scottish, whatever that means. Well, Seminoles use Scottish clothing, a lot of Scottish names like Mick and Mac. There's a lot of, well, Miccosukee. The Seminoles go by the word Miccosukee. That's a Celtic name, Miccosukee. Well, then you have up in the Northeast, you have the Micmac. That's one tribe, the Micmac. That's Celtic. You have these. A lot of people say the Cherokee and different tribes are influenced by Welsh and different Celtic languages. Well, to go back to Tartaria, the Seminoles use a Scottish type of fabric and design called the tartan. So Seminoles use tartans, and they wear tartan around themselves. So there's your Tartarians. My first video on the Seminoles I called the Lost Tribe of Tartaria, because that's what they are. That's why Andrew Jackson, our president, went after them so hard, because they were like the holy grail of unlocking this old Moorish Phoenician history. Because America is a Phoenician land. It's a Canaanite land, a pre-Hebrew people. That's why we're given it in such a bad light, and it's so obscured. We were given Hebrew religion, and you can argue about what Hebrew means. That's fine, but what's for sure is that Hebrew came after Phoenician. So everything that went through the Hebrew to the Greek to the Roman was actually kind of hostile towards Phoenician history, because they were jealous that they weren't the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians were better sailors. They knew more stuff. They went farther. They had more goods. They were taller. They were smarter. They were superior in every way. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was gonna add about the the great thing that Noble Drew Ali did. Like, he didn't let us get wrapped up in the word Hebrew, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know Hebrew is a bastardized language. It's a conglomerate of the Phoenician languages,
Mm-hmm.
right? So essentially, it's all Canaanite, huh? So
Mm-hmm.
Noble Drew Ali literally told us we're Canaanites, so that we could tap into the true source instead of trying to find Hebrew history, because there's really no such thing,
Mm-hmm.
But to get into the real essence of history, you can start. We all study the Canaanite language, or those Canaanite regions of people, these Afro-Asiatic people,
Mm-hmm. No, wonderfully put. Good point. That makes me think of how with phonetics comes from the word Phoenician. Well, the word calligraphy comes from the word Kali, or the word Caliph. So calligraphy,
which means black. Yeah, Kali means black.
Yep, Kali, California, where Kali was a black goddess. She was the
Caliphate. The Caliphate. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So, and the first people, like I said earlier, the very, very first people that Columbus bumped into when he got here we're told that it was Taino people. And that's true. There's truth to that. But Taino is just one small tribe on one island, or a couple islands. The Carib people is the greater cultural identity that all of these tribes went along to. So with history, when it serves, when I say they, the rulers, the people that rule the world, when they are redrawing maps and renaming people, if it serves their agenda to take a whole region and make it an artificial country that has no cultural truth behind it, they'll do that. They also will do the opposite, where if there is a unified people, they will start representing them historically as fractured, so that they are teaching that they were the larger, unified, stronger, superior, older people, because they don't like having competitors. And the Phoenicians are the biggest competitors. It's the biggest competition there is, because we have a largely Roman history. There's no question about that. We have a largely Roman Empire history, then a Roman Catholic history. So those are two big revisions, right there, rewrites. Then you have all the Alexandrias burning down. You have all the book burnings during the Middle Ages. They were burning books for wood in the Middle Ages because no one could read. So what use is a book? So yeah.
Can I ask how long is that? What does they say? They say beneath the Vatican, there's the
vaults.
Yeah. They saying it's miles and miles and miles long, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I've always kind of thought that I don't think they burnt none of those books, and they still have them. You know what I mean? Like, what else can you be doing with miles and miles long of a library? You know?
I don't know, but you're absolutely right. It's what is the kind of what we were talking about before. Where did everything go wrong? Where did the world go wrong? Well, in ancient times, you had a caste system. And the caste system was not a hierarchy. It was a system of responsibility. So the people at the top had the most responsibility, right? Rulers, holy men. They had to burden themselves with the troubles of many people. So they rightfully earned their places at the top of the pyramid. The pyramid is a structure whether we like it or not. There's always going to be leaders and there's always going to be followers. So when you have this ancient hierarchy system, it typically went as follows. You had the laborers and the unskilled and the people that couldn't read down at the bottom. Then you had the merchant class, right? The merchant class. Then above them you had the warrior class, or the knight class. And then above them you had the royalty, or the nobility. And then above them you had the Brahmins, right? And the Brahmins, or the religious caste at the top, that's actually what Phoenician means originally. That's actually what Hebrew means originally. That's actually what Christian means originally. All these terms start out as occupations. It's something you do. You practice being a Christian, a Phoenician, a Moor. You practice this. It's not an identity that you get and, oh, I don't believe in it. Oh, my parents were Christian and, oh, I just don't believe in it, That's how we look at it today. But kind of like I was saying, it's how these cities work. These are different occupations, and they took away the system. And what happened was somewhere along the line, probably in Babylon, that's why they tell us, civilization started, right? Civilization started in Babylon. Civilization didn't start in Babylon. Domestication started in Babylon. Domestication of the human species. So mankind started getting domesticated and enslaved in Babylon. And that's why the first cities start coming up in Babylon. And that's why they tell us that's the cradle of civilization. That's not true. It's not true whatsoever. But I see we're joined by someone else.
So you say Babylon is the cradle of civilization according to them?
Well, they tell us it's Iraq, Iran, Syria, not Syria, sorry, Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, and parts of Israel, and maybe a little bit of Turkey and Armenia.
So basically, that's where the Garden of Eden was, right? Is what they're saying.
That's what they're saying. I don't believe that at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could be right here in America, the Garden of Eden. But what I'm just saying is, going off what they say. So that would mean, Babylon, coming from the word Babylon or Babel, meaning like the gateway of El, gateway to the gods.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, was they trying to say the Garden of Eden was the gateway to the gods, or it's just the tower itself? I don't know if it's the tower that they were building was supposed to be the gateway to the gods.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of strange. And then, like put it like this, Babylon, since we use that word in English, we got the word baby, and then we got lion, Lon, meaning lion, right? So it's literally the
Son
baby
of the lion.
lion.
That makes
then we got London. Don meaning master. So we got the master lion, and we over here, we like all of our life we've been crucifying the baby lion, but nobody crucifies the master lion.
That's great. You know, that makes me think of Ponce de Leon, who's the first guy to discover the continental United States officially, right? Well, let's look at his name, Ponce de Leon. That's the pounce of the lion.
Yep.
The lion
Napoleon
pounced on America and handed it over to the Castilian Spanish, who had just defeated the Moors in a war in Granada. So 1491-92, they defeat the Moors in Granada, and Columbus immediately leaves for the Americas, the Amoricas, to go fight the Amorites in a different land. They won that battle. Now they're going to America to keep up the battle. You know, they have to keep up the war because they can't let the Moors regroup in America. So you could either say that they had escaped to America, or it's also very likely that the Moors were here in America much before, much longer before Columbus got here.
Pardon me,
I saw you earlier talk about excuse me, my bad. Go ahead, Kudjo.
Oh yeah, let me just get brother Aljamer in here and brother Kasir before just hold your thought, D. Aljamer, you there?
Yeah, I'm right here. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, more. We could hear you.
Peace and honors to everyone on the panel. Great bill as always. Great camaraderie. Appreciate the enlightenment from everyone. Yeah, I mean, not to just cut what was in the middle, but maybe we could do this in a few minutes. Let everybody get back to the conversation. But Grand Sheik, I sent you a few different articles and pictures. My internet's not that legendary, so I sent them to you because I think you'll be able to share it, and then I could just speak on it. A lot of these articles and information are pertaining to the conversation we're having, and I would just love to get Brother Longo's opinion on some of these just information. Few of this stuff I just came across last week, but I don't know if you want to do that now, or we could do that like in a few minutes, get back to the conversation.
Yeah, but let me just get brother Kasir, and then I'm gonna pull these images up and we'll go from there.
Cool.
Islam Nobles, Islam Longo.
Islam.
I didn't even know y'all knew about this noble because I was looking at him from like about 2 or 3 months now. Put him on to some other nobles, and we've been watching all the videos. And you know, my family comes from down Florida, and my other side of the family comes from Georgia. So everything he's saying is on point. And I was watching. I went back to I seen a video y'all was on. I had one of your friends on, and he made a mention of I was talking about Noble Drew Ali. And he said, you said, how long are we going to take back the line of this Tartaria? And he said, Tartaria is actually the line that we draw to find the Moorish Empire based off of what they did and, you know, with the Quran in Rome and that type of thing, like the whole Roman, Holy Roman Empire being in so-called Spain. Now, about Spain and Portugal and France and Britain, I noticed something about this for the past 2 years now. If you look over in the lands that they call Spain, Leon, Castile, whatever, Andalusia, we could even do it to include Portugal. Those lands are nowhere near as big as when you look over on this side of the world and type in Portuguese Empire. It includes majority of America. British Empire, majority of America and parts of Africa. But the small little isles up there, they want us to believe that that's real Scotland. That's real England. But if you hit empire behind it, it brings you to America with way vaster land. And it drew me into more studying on with the Eden thing. If we take into consideration that what if the conquest from the east is a story that was made up and only done in plays called burlesque degrees, like what's it called, the Moorish Romance. That's the only place I see that's the first story that they wrote in play where they make, you know, this Morocco of the West. Now, when I go back, I see there's a circumnavigation of the globe by Francis Drake. He had to go to the Ottomans to get the Furman's passport to be able to travel. They came over here with gunpowder, right? But the Chinese, so-called Cathay, had the gunpowder. So if they left from the west to cross over Pacific, wouldn't they be crossing the Red Sea, which Cortez called the Red Sea over there in the Gulf of California? If he came all the way over on the east side, how did the West Coast get a place called the Mer de Cortez, which is actually the Verde Bahilma, which is the Red Sea? And that's in the West.
Facts. That's on point.
Oh, yeah.
So are we looking at the Eden and Granada? El Granada, that's also in the West. And then the seven cities of Gold Sabola and with the Shibalba, is that also in the West of the East?
Yep, Quivira.
Yeah. There. Oh, and there's more Islam Noble. Our Young Future. I'm a transition to what you were gonna go into because I already know where we're going. I'm gonna let him ask it to you, but we know about a couple tribes that tie directly into the Moorish Empire and the Moorish tribes or the Moorish nations that they don't really speak of. One of the ones I'm gonna give up. I won't go into the ones you're gonna do, no, but I'm gonna do one that I found. They're called the Moor-Talking. I think they would pronounce it Moroccan. The Moroccans were the first people that Sir Francis. Yeah. Oh, see, I already know. The first people that Sir Francis John Smith ran into, and then they actually were having a battle with the Rappahannocks. He spoke out. Supposedly, he spoke out the first treaty between the Rappahannocks and Moroccan, but they never mentioned the Moroccan. They call them all Powhatan together in Virginia territory, but they don't mention the Moroccans in New England, and they actually had their own nation too. So I'll just leave it there and give it to our Young Future Islam, y'all.
And the Melungians, hey, Dr. Longo, have you ever heard, because you spoke on the Huguenots, and the Huguenots, they have a branch, they have an arm in this Moorish history in America. Have you ever heard of the Melungians? You on mute, brother.
Sorry. They're from the Southeast United States?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. I don't know a ton. I don't know a ton about them, but I've heard about them, of course.
I have the thing up, brother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is good. I have something really good to go after this. But yeah.
Yeah. So this is just the front. This is like from a magazine article from like the 1980s. ECC was speaking about the Melungians. As you can see, the title, "Are These Blue-Eyed, Dark-Skinned People Descendants of America's Lost Colony?" Excuse me, of America's Lost First Settlers. And I'm sure you've heard of the depictions of Abraham Lincoln being depicted in cartoon as a Moor with a Moorish pirate. Have you ever saw that cartoon picture before?
Yeah. Well, I've heard the theory that he's Moorish, transatlantic DNA, of course. Yeah.
Facts. Greshi, if you want, I have you could just click forward and then we could just read this up a little bit because it's pertaining to everything that we're saying right now. The Welsh, Carthaginian, it all is all playing a part. Cool. I got it on mine. Let me pull it up on mine real quick. Yeah, put on mine so I can see it. Give me 1 second. I'll read it from mine.
Yeah, and when you see that Melungian, you literally got the word engine. So like we say engines.
Engine. Yep.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
Like
That's Indian. Don't say that. That's rude. Don't say that. Hide that history.
Yeah, these are melanated engines. That's what they're saying. You know what I mean? Melungians.
Okay.
And engine is closer to Ignatius. Ignatius or Ignish or Igni. Igni means fire.
Fire in Latin.
Yeah. Agni. So Ignatius, indigenous, is largely that same word.
Okay.
And I take it back to Phoenician or Phoenician.
Oh yeah, and Finnegan. Finnegan, thank you. Finnegan is how you get the Phoenician tying into the Celtic. Because if you know about the Creek and the Seminole, what are they? They're North African mixed with Celtic. So right there, you have your Phoenician crossover, because the Phoenicians, their empire was North Africa to Ireland. And like you were saying, how when you look at the empires, like Portugal, for example, Portugal was just this tiny little sliver, but its colonial territories were, as large as Russia, pretty much. Well, believe it or not, they actually give us the same story, or try to give us the same story with the Phoenicians. They tell us that the Phoenician homeland was just this tiny little strip next to Israel and Lebanon, Tyre, Acre, Cyprus.
Yeah,
right?
Sidon.
Well, what if I told you that Cyprus is where you get the cypress tree in America?
Yeah,
You better believe it. Yeah,
We studied
yeah.
that.
Noah's Ark.
We studied the
Noah's
acacia
Ark.
tree and all that.
And Arkansas, which has the most biblical city names of any place in the world, and America, especially Arkansas, has the most biblical city names. Well, that's because it's the land of the arks and the Kansas, the Khans. It's the ark, the Khans, the Canaanites, the Canaans, and that's Arkansas has some of the most Mississippi coastline along the river Isis. So that's why you get all those biblical names. It has the most biblical names of any state by far.
Yeah, they got
we take that name Arkansas back to Uak Shaktun, Akbakal, and that has Mayan fonts in it, like
implication
being a turtle and Uak Shaktun.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Washington.
Hey, Gopher's wood.
Go back to Wichita.
Like Arkansas,
the
got
gopher
Gopher's wood. Gopher's wood is what Noah built the ark out of. Florida also has it.
Gopher wood only grows in one place naturally, and that's the Apalachicola River of Eden, of Florida. Appalachia is the apple of Eden. It's a small part of the Florida Gulf Coast up into Georgia a little bit, and it's actually, believe it or not, here I'll show you the 4 rivers of Eden. There's a lot of actually no, you keep showing that. I can explain it well. There's 4 rivers. There's the only 4-headed river system, equal 4-headed river system in the world that flows east. That flows east is in Apalachicola River area. You have the Gihon, Pison, Euphrates, and Tigris, or Hiddekel, are the Flint, the Fish Pond, I forget the other 2, but they're up there in Florida. And the lake that they feed into, this is no coincidence. The lake they feed into is Seminole Lake.
Yo, that's crazy.
Seminole Lake is where the 4 rivers of Eden flow into.
You know what's funny about that is that when you take it into that measure, you then think, are they talking about the people when they say Seminole, or are they speaking about the rivers that run away into each other?
Yeah, and exactly, running over
land.
It's running away, like Seminole with an O, Seminole. But then it's also the first river, the Seminole River, the first ever, right? The seminary, Seminole.
The old semen. Yeah. Because it's like saying that's where life was birthed.
Exactly. And that's where the Gulf Stream comes from. The Gulf Stream is it's essentially the semen of the planet. And Florida is the dick, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. Oh, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Because the Gulf Stream comes out of the Gulf of Mexico, and it fertilizes the rest of the world with warm water. And when the ice ages come and kill everything in Europe, it's only the small places that the Gulf Stream chooses to survive. So this is like the father. Scotland,
well, we call it the mother.
The Gulf Stream goes directly to those areas.
To where the Phoenicians went. So the Phoenicians would have used this Gulf Stream like a highway to go from Finland, Iceland, England, North Africa, and of course Florida, where it comes from. So Florida would have been on their map, and they would have all been arguing and trying to keep Florida for themselves because it's the best climate in the world, and they would have known that. They would have been fighting for it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
just
then
the
with the
fact that
natural. Go ahead.
not my bad. I was just gonna say the fact that all of these ways of travel, like we coming from the equatorial wind currents. You feel me? Like you say, the Gulf Stream is taking you up north. So
Yeah.
like you have no choice but to go to Florida. You feel me? Because the Gulf Stream is gonna go straight from Mexico all the way, like you say, Finland and places.
They've thrown glass bottles. They've thrown tracking devices off of the coast of Florida, and they went up to England, down to Africa, and then back across to the Caribbean, and then back to Florida. So this is also the slave trade is largely the Gulf Stream.
Yeah,
and
the same path hurricanes take, like the equatorial wind current.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, hurricane.
Oh, well, real quick. Let me jump in because y'all gonna keep going. The slave trade. Can we break that down to being 1491's Granada Treaty? The surrender of Granada was really because like when they said that 300,000 people came to the north only, but that's when Nicholas. I think it was Nicholas. He said that only 300,000 people left. So-called.
Yeah. Can I share my screen and show you guys something?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I've got two things. So right there, before we hop off of that, are these blue-eyed African descendants? Well, keep that in mind, guys. Blue-eyed African descendants. America's long lost, whatever it says. Well, I'm about to show you something pretty crazy. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, this is Charlie Smith. Charlie Smith was born in Liberia, in Africa, and sold into slavery at about 12 or 14 years old. Okay?
The slave. No, go ahead.
He lived to 140 years old. And he's special. He was sold into slavery, then came to America and Florida. And as soon as far back as he can remember, he was an orange picker. So as soon as he got here, he started picking oranges. Well, then the Civil War happened and he was freed, and he decided, well, I like picking oranges. It's a good job. Florida's wonderful. It's perfect. And he just decided to keep picking oranges. And it kept him healthy. And those oranges kept him, that citrus kept him clean on the inside.
Vitamin C.
He lived to 140 years old. And of course, they try and attack his theories. They're not his theories. They attack his story. But I'll tell you why. It has to do with his theories. He had one particular theory that I think you guys will see can get you in a lot of trouble. But why I'm talking about him is he was actually a light-eyed African man. He had.
We called them the moon-eyed people. The Cherokees called them the moon-eyed people. And we
Hey, what you know about that, Kathir? What you know about that?
Bro,
the moon-eyed people.
It go deep because that shit in my family.
Let's look at.
When we seen that they had different eyes than us, we start killing them off, even though they was the same shade as us. And a lot of elders, a lot of y'all Moors, y'all got elders in y'all family that got the moon eyes now. Like when you look around their eye circle, it just look like it's turning blue around the outside. Yeah. He had it deep though.
Yeah. I think it's no coincidence that this guy lived as old as he did, and he probably had some of this special DNA.
And take it back to the movie Dune too.
Oh, Dune too, of course. What's Dune? Dune is Arrakis. Arrakis is Arcadia. It's Iraq. It's Uruk. Uruk is the name of
the same coastal regions of the spice trees. Spice melon, melon.
Exactly. Wonderful. And the melanin is what disappears from your eyes when they turn blue.
Mm-hmm.
And the spice traders, some of the Vikings especially, who lived in the north but traded down south, they would have had no pigment in their eyes. They would have been had completely blue, like a husky, right? Like a husky's eyes. Well, the Moon-eyed.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, just real quick, last thing I wanted to say was Moon-eye. The Moon-eyed people are and I'm not saying this in a bad way, Illuminati, Moon-eyed people.
Paul Mooney.
Also, Ammonite, the Ammonite, Ammonite,
Oh,
Amun-Ra, immunized people, right? Immunized, right?
They depicted the moon as the eye.
They're trying to immunize us all right now, aren't they? Immunized.
Yep.
So it's all in the phonetics.
Yep.
But this guy was really cool. So
wait a minute more. You're going too fast. That's crazy. Like a moon symbol is an eye, but it represents the moon.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when you see a glimmer in an eye, it's like a crescent moon.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's that goes
Paul
in
Mooney. Paul Mooney.
That goes in this.
But let me tell you the biggest thing. Sorry to talk over. I just got to get this out. Okay, with the Moon-eyed people, this Moon-eyed man, let me tell you what the biggest thing he did that got him into trouble was. That got people started attacking his life story and saying that it was all fake. You know what this man, Charlie Smith, did when he was invited? When he was about 115 or 120, 100 and something, they invited him to come watch the original moon landing at NASA because he lived very close by, right? In Florida, Space Coast, right? Well, talking about your moon-eyed man right here, you want to know what he told them when he was invited publicly? Ain't no man gonna land on no moon. That's what he said.
Prophecy.
Now, isn't that incredible? So that's when he kind of got canceled. That was in like the 60s or 70s, early 70s, and they canceled him for that so they stopped promoting him as one of the oldest men, and they started calling him a liar. They started saying that he was making up his whole life story about getting enslaved and being way older. They were saying that he was trying to say he was a slave at some point. They were trying to say that he wanted to be a slave, if you know what that means. You know what I mean? Like he was only 20 years old or so, or maybe not even born when slavery was outlawed. So they're trying to say that he was trying to say, oh, no, I was a slave too, so that he would kind of like welfare, essentially. But if you know about this man's story, he picked oranges every day of his life for over 100 years. So he wasn't looking for any handouts. And ex-slaves of that era were not eager to make shit up about themselves to get attention. They were trying to keep their heads down and not get into trouble. So
and then I will believe if nobody we never got reparations per se, but the people who left to go over to the when they followed the Indian Removal Act, not the Negro, but the Indian Removal Act, the people who went over to the Oklahoma, they received those lands that they took was confiscated by the military. That's called the Special Field Order 15.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they got given the 40 acres and the mule and stuff. So anybody that stayed over in the east wasn't included in that. He was in the east side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he wasn't the whole what became reparations. He wouldn't even have been. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, the only tribe ever that never officially surrendered, we're told, the only official tribe to never surrender. Well, I don't know about that, so maybe I'm out of the loop on that. But we're told
same people.
Okay, well, we're told in Florida that the Seminole. We're told.
Yeah, I was about to say they'll say Seminole, but that's all the groups are the same people because
that's
we dealing with Fort Negro, right?
Yeah.
Fort Negro.
That diaspora would be called a Morgatti Kaken. That's the Morgatti Kaken diaspora that reaches from Kanata, Kanandasaga, where Grand Sheik is at, all the way down to where you at, Longo, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Same blooded people, under various names.
Yeah. You also have, believe it or not, Kennedy. This old Irish name, Kennedy, actually stems from some of the same origin. Now, obviously, the Kennedys aren't black, but somewhere along the line, Ireland was a mixing point between.
Hey,
yeah,
it's ill that you say that, because a lot of the prominent Melungian authors are, guess what their surname is? Kennedy. So this is how divine it is. This is how divine it is. Like that article we was just reading. That article we was just reading. Feel me? Well, we didn't get to read it, but it was talking about that sister right there. It was talking about the Kennedys in that region. But yeah, I would love to just read that just for the public and just to get your view on it, on some of that information real quick.
Good work.
And the name Kennedy.
Oh, and real quick before you read it, I got a quick jump. When we look at the language that the Seminoles are speaking, they call their language Afro-Caribbean Creole, and they call that a Gullah language. So, you know, like now we can see more. So who are the people that was, you know, included in the Seminole? Because we know Seminole wasn't really a tribe, but a tag for runaways. So what tribe, what were you running away from? So that's the first thing. Like, were they running away from Creeks? Were they running away from Cherokee? A lot of them were runaway Creeks and Cherokee and Choctaw.
Yeah.
So like you start to see all the 5 recognized tribes in these same people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, it all goes. Well, let's read that. You wanted to pull that up. If you want to read that, let's read that.